when you want to start drawing backs, or when you want to start drawing anything related to the human body, you want to break things down in this kind of hierarchy: landmarks, large muscles, secondary muscles, etc. And these landmarks are mainly skeletal landmarks, right? You want to go from the bones. The bones rarely change from person to person, and slowly move down to the big muscles and going down smaller and smaller and smaller. We're going to be talking about backs, the human back, and I'm going to have Rocky Kim's drawing class anatomy book as help to help me out through this. Bony landmarks. We're going to start with the highest priority of bony landmarks. So when we look at a picture of the back, we have a few things that we're looking at. The first bony landmark we have is the spine. Now this is going to be a little bit different than if you're looking from the front, because from the front there are different bony landmarks that are more visible, but on the back a lot of it is wrapped up in muscle. So one of the main bony landmarks that we will see is the spine that's running down like this. So it's really important to learn your skeleton and learn how to draw skeletons very, very early in your drawing process. What I mean by that is you want to know what the spine is and the main important parts of the spine. So at the top here we have the seventh cervical vertebrae that connects down to the thoracic region, and then we have the lumbar region. So if we look at the spine from the side view, say we have like a rib cage here, we have the spine coming down from the neck. So here we have seventh cervical vertebrae. Here's the seventh one. This is the one that sticks out. And then it curves out this way for the thoracic region. So we have the thoracic curve curving down here. So it goes from poop to poop. And then we have the lumbar region down here, which curves back to this. And this is the pelvis, like right here. So we hear the lumbar, there's like lumbar support. Your clutch gamer chair has that lumbar support on it. So that's that region right there. So we want to have this S shape to it. When the human body is standing, there's a natural S-shaped curve to it. So lumbar down here with the thoracic region, and then you have your seventh cervical vertebrae with the back of the neck. The next bony landmark is the scapula. Scapulas are probably one of the most important bones for the artists to know because they determine range of motion. The scapula, which is right over here, what we're seeing is that on a back view, like so, we have two bones that jut out like this. You have the pizza diamond shapes, like so. This is going to connect right here to the acromion process. And this is where our shoulder lives, right over here. The reason why the scapula is so important is because it dictates your range of motion in a lot of ways. It's important to understand that the scapula, if this is the rib cage and this is the back view, we have the cervical area of the spine, the thoracic area of the spine, and the lumbar area of the spine down here. The scapula can move around. It's not tied down. It can, like, you know, maybe not this much range of motion, but it like slides around. You can feel it when you move your arm, right? You can feel it on the shoulder. Your scapula is sliding around the back of your rib cage in order to give your arms that big range of motion. So if we're seeing over here on a normal, or I guess like on a relaxed pose, the scapula would have been more aligned with the spine down over here. However, because this is this person is stretching their arms out, the scapula is being slid further over to the side. So that's what we're seeing, and that's what we want to keep in mind. And you want to keep in mind that you have the spine of the scapula, which is this back ridge that's essentially parallel to the spine. So you have the spine and the borders and the ridges. So this area here is subcutaneous. And then we have the acromion process. And then all of this here is what gets covered by these muscles that are sliding, that are covering it like this. The next bony landmark that we need to keep in mind is actually the rib cage. It's going to be the main thing that's going to help keep all of our proportions in check, right? This goes all the way back to gesture drawing. If we're, you know, putting down the figure, we want to have rib cages so that our general proportions can be marked out and we can figure out the size of the body relatively quickly, and all of our muscles have somewhere to attach to, have somewhere to wrap around, have somewhere to like, you know, drape over, cover. The other part that goes with the rib cage, you can't really talk about the rib cage without talking about the pelvis. So then we also need to make sure that we have our pelvis shapes ready, right? Whether we have our bucket, whether we have like our diaper, whether we have, you know, whatever this is. Maybe this is the diaper, something like that, right? The skeletal pelvis. So we want to have our pelvis shapes locked in as well. So these are all important bony landmarks to keep in mind. But all of that said, the main thing about the back is the muscles that go on top of the bony landmarks, the muscles that attach and wrap around and kind of puzzle piece their way through everything like a jigsaw puzzle. The very first muscle that I want to go over is going to be the trapezius, which is this guy right over here. It's this big diamond-shaped muscle that's covering a big majority of the back. Is this guy right over here. So we have the trapezius muscle sliding across like that. It goes all the way down from down here, all the way up to here. This is the 7th cervical vertebrae that sticks out. You can feel it on the back of your neck, and then you have it attaching to the arms. You can see this muscle over from the front view as well, because you have your traps over here. They're part of your shoulder muscles. So say if we were to build it out, I'm just gonna have my little mannequin guy right over here, having my cervical vertebrae, or my thoracic vertebrae with the lumbar portion of the spine. And then here are my contour lines as it goes down. Here is my pelvis, just finding the shapes like so. This thing goes down to the coccyx. So we have something like this. And then, oh yeah, let's put in our scapula. And then we can also put in like a little bit of a humerus. Say we have something like this. Let's start building out the parts of the muscle. So the first part is the trapezius. Let's start adding that in. It attaches like pretty much all the way up here from the back of the skull, and it comes all the way down like so. Comes down like this. And then it's a big diamond shape, right? It attaches to the spine ridge or whatever it's called of the scapula. And then it goes all the way down to like the center middle of the back, like so. So all of this is trapezius. And we can see that if we have the skeleton figured out, then the trapezius and the other muscles that we'll see will attach pretty easily. And you want to keep in mind that there's always a function. There's function to all of the forms. So if we're seeing that the form has muscles up here, what is the function of the muscles being all the way up here? It's to raise the shoulders like this. It's all of this muscle over here, this function is to bring the shoulders back, right? So that we can rub our arms backwards. So the next muscle, this one is going to be the latissimus dorsi. It's going to have a bit of a wing shape to it, and it wraps around the body from the back. So we have this latissimus dorsi that wraps around like so, and it's like this big wing shape that goes around like this. You don't really see it, it's not the most prominent, but you will kind of see this ridge line here. And it's also really important for bodybuilders and such, if they were to extend their arms, you'll see it flaring out from the sides here. I think that this muscle, even though it's a back muscle, you actually see it a lot more prominently from like a front view, at least where people draw it. Like say you have the arm up like so. This is the front of the face, like this, and you have the arm up, and you have this rib cage like this. A lot of the times when you're putting down the armpit, like a big portion of it is the latissimus dorsi that comes out like this, and then you have your pecs going out like that. Right, so you'll see it very prominently from like this kind of angle with the arm is up, but otherwise it lives pretty carefree back here. The other big anatomy portion is going to be the erector spinae, or the like the middle spine area. So we kind of see that in here. I don't like books with like a crazy big spine. It makes me want to I'm just gonna rip it and fold it over, because I need to use this book to learn, not for whatever. So I end up just breaking all the books, but it is what it is. I like books that lay flat. So for here, we have the erector spinae. It's not labeled, but you see it right over here. It's these two that are bumped over like this. So on our little model over here, we'll see, it's not that clear, but we can see we'll have two ridges, two tubes coming down like this. So if we have rib cage, boom, boom, and two tubes running on either side of the spine coming down like this, and it wraps around. So this is going to be the exact same angle, as just clearer. This one is not the most prominent, but you do see it on the lower back if they're if the body is twisted out in some kind of way. So let's have the more practical example, I guess. If you have a body twisted out like this, and it doesn't matter what the arms are doing, and you'll see a bit of this erector spinae wrapping out like this. You'll see it protrude a little bit. The other thing to keep in mind too that I put in here is the pelvis with the, piscis and the ascis, the posterior superior iliac spine, and then the anterior superior iliac spine, and you have the iliac crest wrapping around, you have the coccyx, and then you have the little dimples and stuff over here. All of this is going to inform where you place different parts of the body. And then here is where the latissimus dorsi hits, and then here is where the trapezius hits. So everything builds in together. The other part of the form, let's move on, is you'll see this crease from where the deltoid, the back of the deltoid. Because if we know that the deltoid, it's a muscle that wraps around the shoulder. There's a front deltoid, a side deltoid, and then a back deltoid. So we'll see the back deltoid, and then you'll see a little bit of a crease here. Just keep in mind. And then the other thing that we want to keep in mind is the infraspinatus and the the teres major. So if we have the arm raised, so this is where we go back into the scapula, right? We've gone over a lot of the really big muscles now, so now it's time to kind of focus in on some of the smaller details of the body. So we have our trapezius that's wrapping around like so. We have our acromion process, say we have the arm, and then it's going up like so. And this is our scapula. We have a big muscle, or we have our deltoid first, let's put that in. Deltoid wraps around it like this, and it has this kind of a shape to it. Our infraspinatus, all these kind of come from this spine area, this ridge area. And then we have infraspinatus muscle that wraps around like so. And then we have our teres major, which wraps around like this. And then it wraps underneath and attaches to the arm. So it builds into the armpit. And then right underneath that is the latissimus dorsi. So if we're looking at something like this angle, then you'll see that it kind of splits into two. We have half teres major and then half latissimus dorsi. Just think of it like that. A lot of these are more nuanced, and you can get even more nuanced with the rhomboids. And those muscles are completely covered too, but they help inform the topography of the back. But I think that for, these intents and purposes, it's not too relevant, because I think that the main muscles are trapezius, are latissimus dorsi, are the erector spinae, and then we have a little bit of this wrapping around, and then we have the back of the deltoid to help inform the more silhouetted shapes that we see. And then over here, let's look at some examples, because I think that this can be very helpful. Seeing the range of motion from the scapula. So in this case right here, the scapula curves out like this, and then when the arms are outstretched, the scapula slides out and fans out. It's not stuck on, it's It's free to move. And then we have the latissimus dorsi wrapping around like so. And then we have the trapezius right on top, the big diamond shape. So as we're kind of already seeing, right? Here's also teres major and stuff. But as we're kind of seeing, a big key concept to understand with backs is overlaps. The back muscles overlap a lot. You don't want to be drawing muscles separately. You want to understand how they overlap and how they layer on top of each other. I didn't talk about this before, but I'll mention this slightly. There's two other muscles that are not the most important in a lot of cases, and that's because they are completely covered. And those muscles are the rhomboids. So the rhomboid muscles are these muscles that are basically attaching the scapula to the spine area here, and they help that scapula's range of motion. Now the issue though is that a lot of people don't even really know about these rhomboids because they're right here. And what muscle that we just learned is right here? The trapezius. The trapezius muscle is literally just covering the entire rhomboid. If you are a bodybuilder, if you're so strong, then you'll be able to see the imprint of the rhomboids over the trapezius, but that's like a special case. You'll be able to see a little bit of the rhomboids trying to slide out in certain poses. But overall, like, we don't have to worry so much about it. The main thing that we want to just understand is that there are overlaps. So what are the other overlaps? So we know that the trapezius muscle overlaps the rhomboids. We have the back of the deltoid. The back of the deltoid is overlapping over the infraspinatus and the teres major muscles, the teres major and the teres minor. The latissimus dorsi, it wraps underneath the arms like so, and it attaches to the humerus, I believe, and it covers part of the scapula, the bottom part of the scapula. And then the erector spinae sits behind the trapezius like so. So everything is like building on top of each other and adding on top of each other. So we kind of just deep dove into the muscles, right? Now let's come back out and let's talk a bit more about like what is the practicality of it all. The main things that we want to just keep in mind as like an artist doing, posing and figure drawing is to have a good idea of different transition points or different joint areas. Like a big part of being an artist is learning joints. I think having a strong foundational knowledge or a strong sense and intuition of joints, of how to draw the joints and how the joints work, is basically like 80% of drawing people. So we want to learn, for one, the transition between the neck and how it goes into the trapezius. So if we have our collarbones, I think a lot of people have learned like the clavicle. That's like one of the first things that people learn for like when they're learning anatomy. But we want to build out the muscles that are around. So trapezius, or like the neck connecting and transitioning to the trapezius muscles, you want to have these muscles prominent. You also want to have the spine groove figured out. So what does that look like? Definitely whenever you're drawing like a back view or a side view, having this curve of the spine, you'll probably do a side view. Goes out for the neck, back for the spine, and then back here for the lumbar region. So it has this like S shape, this curve to the body. And then you also want to just keep track of the scapula, keep track of the armpit fold that the scapula kind of creates with the deltoid. There's this armpit fold over here that goes like this. This is a great little like shortcut to memorize, this armpit fold. The bony landmarks of the pelvis, so like the iliac crest, that's a popular one, and then the sacral triangle. So what that is we have the spine, and then it turns into the coccyx or the sacral whatever. And you'll see these two little dimples right here on the back of someone, and then you'll have the erector spinae that's on both sides, like so. So you kind of have this thing going on around in the butt area, and then you have the gluteus maximus that everyone loves. All of that to say is that this area here is somewhere to focus on. And this is an area of transition. This is an area of joints, you can say. So that's why it's so important. So going all the way back and just talking about broad strokes, like how do you learn this stuff? How do you learn? What's the order of learning? You definitely want to start with the skeleton, and then you want to move into the scapula. And then you want to go into trapezius because that's one of the biggest muscles in terms of the back. It covers so much and it's so prominent. And then you go into lats and then deltoid, and then you start basically going deeper and deeper down. So you want to start from big overall forms and then slowly narrow it down into simpler and simpler forms.